We want to take a moment to recognize June's episode sponsor, who we are so grateful for, Heartland Chiropractic. Located in Monticello, Georgia, Dr. Lindsay and her staff have been restoring health naturally for 10 years. At Heartland Chiropractic, it's not just about chiropractic care, it's about building better lives. Their team truly listens, treats every patient like family, and serves with purpose and compassion. We're proud to partner with a business that shares our commitment to impact, service, and community. Call them today for a free consultation, 706-468-6500. Vertigo, neck pain, whiplash, they can help come up with a personalized plan for you. That's 706-468-6500. Thank you, Heartland Chiropractic, for supporting the Impact Show this June.
Welcome back to Impact Podcast. This is episode number 22. And last week, I was by myself without Maddie. This week, I'm by myself again. Maddie's been too busy for me lately, and so hopefully she'll come back. But anyhow, last week we met with Mack and Ria Story, and we that's what we got was their story. Interesting enough, we talked to both of them, and I was thinking about my takeaway. And so, man, the takeaway that I had was where Mac told the story about how you respond instead of react, and how that, just learning that, transformed his life. That's interesting to me. And so we're probably going to get to hear about that some more today, because as we said last week, Mac and Ria are going to join us for a second week, a second episode. And so I knew whenever we invited Mac and Ria down that there would be lots to talk about. And I didn't want to leave anything undone. You know, when people decide to come and spend time with you, you want to make sure you get all the goodie out of it. And so we last week we allowed them to tell their story. And so they each told their story about how they got to where they are today, and that we'll probably dabble in that again today. But today, I want to really dig into the teaching that they share, and the speaking that they do, and what they teach and speak on. And so I had some questions that I'm going to ask them, and this is going to be more of the interview style, okay? And so the next 30 to 45 minutes to an hour, or however long it goes, I decided I'm not going to cut this off. We're going to use the time in which that we've been given, and really get some goodie out of it for our audience. So get your pen and paper out today, because we're going to dig into Mac and Ria and see what they can share to change our life. I mean, at the end of the day, we put this show together to make an impact on the listeners. And so we really want to focus today on, last week we got the story, Mac and Ria. This week we're going to focus on transformational things that you can share with the audience that we may have, whether it be 2 people or 120 or 5,000, whoever's listening. We want to teach them something that will change their life. And so we're going to go through some questions that I normally go through. And at the end, I'm going to give you the opportunity to give your transformation, whatever you would give to them as a gift. Okay? All right. So without any further ado, we don't have to introduce y'all because your story was last week. We're going to get right into it. Okay? And so the first thing I'll say, and by the way, y'all answer these how you want to. And if both of you want to give an answer, then you can, right? It's fine.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask the question, and Matt, you might think, Ria, you answer that one. Or, y'all, I'll let y'all.
Sure.
I'm just going to ask the questions, and then y'all answer.
That's good. I got to say one thing, Jeremy.
Okay.
That opening music gets me fired up.
Dude, it does me too. So
I don't like to talk sitting down because I got too much energy. So this is a sacrifice to sit down and talk to you today. But when I hear that music, I just want to get up so bad, man. I want to put them on a helmet and run through the wall or something. You know
I love it.
Anyway, I just had to say it. That's been waiting. I had to get rid of that adrenaline right there before we started going.
That's good. So I was telling Maddie was like, we don't have to play the music every time, and I'm picking on Maddie. I was like, yeah, we do because it gets me ready.
I love it.
So,
there's something to be said for that, though. It says the energy, right?
Yeah.
It sets the tone, the energy, and that's where you want to be.
We absolutely want to be there, and we want our guests to be there. We want when you want to make an impact, you got to get ready. And so I believe the music helps. It's funny when I started this, I was like, I got to have an intro, and so I got a guitar, and I'm thinking we'll play something, and then I was like, no, I need some like Transformer stuff, and so that I literally went on YouTube, Transformer music. Found it, and it was royalty-free Transformer music.
Good stuff.
It works.
One of those coincidences.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. We're going to get started. Mac or Ria, whoever. I'm just going to ask the question. Y'all answer it. What is your leadership style?
My leadership style?
Mm-hmm.
Is to let somebody else, it's to build a relationship with someone. That's the style before I can start leading, because we define leadership as influence, and when we talk about it, we talk about authentic influence, not what most people perceive leadership to be. You're the boss, you're in a position of power, and it's authority. So I call that artificial influence. So because all they got to do is give you a position. It comes with fully loaded with some amount of artificial influence. That ain't what we're talking about. That's about being a boss. People don't need help to be a boss. They need help to be a leader. So my style is always, I want to have authentic influence. I want to help somebody have a better life at home and at work. So I know I've got to have a relationship. Without trust, there's going to be no relationship, because trust is the foundation of authentic influence. So my style is always build a relationship. One reason I give out my phone number is I want to talk to people. I want to hear their story. I want them. Hopefully that at some point they want to know a little bit about my story. Like you did this podcast, from my frame of reference, is perfect, because you allowed us to go first, and we just kind of talked about our story, much as you could share in that short amount of time with two people, but we didn't come right into teaching. And when we speak, it's the same. We call it connecting. So my style of leadership is connect first. The connection leverages communication, and communication is about information. But connection is about motivation, inspiration, and transformation, so that people actually absorb the communication. So there's a lot. But the number one thing is I start by building a relationship.
There's a lot to what you just said, by the way.
Yes, there's a lot.
we could unpack what he just said.
Days. We talk
For
days.
For days.
I tell people I married him for his name, because if you're going to be a speaker, you need a name like Story. I mean, how cool. Share the stories.
I love it. Ria, is your leadership style the same?
Absolutely, in the fact that relationship has to come first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Leadership is influence. Influence is based on relationships. Mm-hmm. Relationships are built on trust. If you don't know me, you're not going to trust me very far. I won't have much influence. But relative to how that translates for me is different than Mac. Mac influences more with words. I influence more with questions and listening. So we have a different
style.
A different style, but all built on the same principle of you must have that relationship.
Yeah, it's foundational, right? So relationship, and that's what, But y'all's style would be the same but different in the way that you do it.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, the principle would be the same. The practice would be different.
There
That's
you
another
go.
lesson too.
There you go.
But that's
there you go.
I got to say one thing before you move on, Jeremy, for the folks listening, because we talked about trust as a foundation of authentic influence. And in my first book, Defining Influence, I teach about what I'm about to say, because trust is so important. Without trust, you don't have a foundation upon which to build authentic influence. You don't follow someone unless you have to.
Right.
In that case. And so if I don't have to follow you, if there's no trust, I'm not going to follow you. If you're the boss and I ain't made enough choices that I can quit and go get a better boss, I may not like you and I may not trust you, but I follow you because I have to, because you got control over me. But what I teach then is, so if trust is so important, what's the foundation of trust? Because that's really, really important. And what I teach there is my intention. And intention is the foundation of trust. And that breaks down into two more pieces, which is my intention to motivate you or manipulate you? If you and you get to decide, I don't get to decide. I know what I want you to take away from it, but I don't get to decide. I could be thinking my goal is to motivate you. You could be thinking the whole time he's trying to manipulate me, and that's the one that matters.
That's how you receive it.
Yeah, that's all that matters.
Yep.
When we talk about perception is reality or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But that's when it comes to intention, it's 100% the truth. If you think, and motivation means mutual benefit. We both going to win out of this, whatever's going on. Manipulation is my benefit.
Right.
I ain't worried about you. I'm worried about me.
Right.
And if you feel like that's it, manipulation, there is no foundation to build trust. You got to have motivation from me, meaning mutual benefit. Like when I say, when we go and we speak somewhere and maybe the owner brought us into a company. If that owner's not a good leader, he may be a phenomenal manager, but if he's not a good leader of people, when we come in and start talking this kind of stuff, a lot of people will feel like they're being manipulated.
Oh, yeah.
But because he tries to manipulate them, now we're just an extension of him.
Yeah.
That's why we got to tell the stories.
Yeah.
So that hopefully we can impact them in a way that the bad boss doesn't.
Thank you, Heartland Chiropractic, for supporting the Impact Show this June. At Heartland Chiropractic, it's not just about chiropractic care, it's about building better lives. Their team truly listens, treats every patient like family, and serves with purpose and compassion. We're proud to partner with a business that shares our commitment to impact, service, and community. Call them today for a free consultation, 706-468-6500.
Well, they have to receive you, right? So when you go into a place to teach or speak, they have to be receptive to your message, and you have to break those walls down. That you're responsible for doing that coming in. And when you come in as humble as you do, that's one reason I believe that people do take walls down, and you build trust that way too.
Yeah, it's all about everything. We're always building, with anybody watching, anybody listening, anybody we're interacting with, we're always building trust or creating distrust in every single thing that we're doing.
Yeah, that's true.
And I may not even be talking to you. You may, I know Kenny's making it happen for us in the background with the lighting and the cameras.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kenny.
Yeah.
I'm going to use him as an example, even though everybody can't see him. But you may see me talking to Kenny, and I ain't even talking to you. I ain't never met you. But the way I'm talking to Kenny, and you may not even be able to hear me. You can just see my body language. You instantly start to distrust me because there's no relationship. So the first thing that happens in our relationship is I become overdrawn in that emotional trust account. It's kind of like a bank account, right? We always making deposits and withdrawals. And so anyway.
It's funny. I call that leadership capital.
Yep, same thing.
Yeah,
same thing.
And when you start talking about the bank account, we talk about on the show depositing leadership capital so that you can spend it later. So anyway, very cool. Okay, so your leadership style, what I gathered from all of that is relationship driven, and that's perfect. So, all right, here's the one we should have started with probably, but so what kind of impact do you desire to have on the world?
I'll let Mac speak first, and then I'll
Okay.
tag on.
I guess. What kind of impact?
What kind of
specifically?
impact do you desire to have on the world?
I just want to. What I want to do is make the world a better place by motivating and inspiring people to help me make the world a better place.
That's right.
When I go out and I meet people, I want to lead leaders. I'm out there searching. I tell people, it's fishing, just like in the Bible, but it's a spin-off, right? I'm going fishing for people who value this stuff like we value this stuff. I don't care what level they're at. I don't care how old they are. I don't care how much money they have or don't have. I don't care even really how well they're doing in their character at the moment. All I care is, do they have a desire to get better?
And the reason impact started, wow, you just teed me up. So the desire to understand that sooner than later, right? So when I first started the show, I said, why are we here? Well, my desire was to generate a desire in someone else for them to understand what that means sooner than later. In other words, don't wait until you get to a certain point in your life where you're struggling, or don't wait until, I always tell people, God puts you in the headlock. Don't wait until your dad dies. Don't wait until you go through a divorce. Don't wait until your mom died. Don't wait until something happens for you to understand, hey, I need to get with it, right? Because that's what happened to me. I told y'all, my father passed away in 2020, and I was like, man, it changed me. Okay? And I was on a mission in life already, and I was growing in my career and all that, but when he died, it was like a switch. And I said, I'm halfway through this journey, and I haven't done what I wanted to do, and now it galvanized a desire in me to grow, okay, and see other people grow and to really impact the world. And so here we are, several years later, this is all coming to fruition. But what you just said, Mac, was that the impact that you want to have on the world is seeing other people have a desire to change, transform, and grow. And so that's wonderful.
And hopefully, based on John Maxwell's research, about 10% of those people, and those people are rare.
Yeah.
But out of those people, only about 10% of those people are going to, start the cycle over again. Because most people, we won't give up to grow and develop ourselves. Most people don't read and study books. They don't watch podcasts. They ain't trying to get better. They just trying to get through the day so they can go escape on the weekend and then go back. Because they escape on the weekend, they ensure they got the same week next week.
Yeah.
They can't get ahead, and they got problems like I did in their personal life, and they just continue to have problems everywhere they go. If Bob's got a problem everywhere Bob goes, Bob is a problem. But Bob don't know it. But Bob needs to know it.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Yeah.
Rhea, what about you?
For me, if I could give every person on earth one thing, it's the understanding that almost all of the time in life we can go do, be, and have what we want in life if we're willing to make the choices and the sacrifices to get it. But I think so much of the time we limit ourselves and our potential because we aren't willing to sacrifice those choices or habits or behaviors that don't get us where we want to go. Or we believe, again, a limiting belief, right? The victim mindset is I can't go do, be, or have what I want because of someone or something else. And so we don't reach for it and we don't strive for it. We've all heard the cliche, if you believe it, you can achieve it, right? There are a few things that's not going to be possible for. But most of the time, if we don't believe it, we won't ever achieve it because we will never become the person who can achieve it.
We won't do the work.
And that applies at every dimension of our life, physically, with our physical health. I meet a lot of people who want to be healthier so they can, play with their grandkids, but that requires some sacrifices and some intentional living in how you eat or how you exercise, right? Career, personally, professionally, where I'm going. Can I grow my business? Can I get the job I want? Yes, but it's going to cost something. And you have to decide, what are you willing to give up? So much of the time in life, we can't reach what we want because we're not willing to let go of something that's holding us back.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah, if we wouldn't have given up everything like we talked about last time, we wouldn't be sitting on, on your couch here.
Right.
We had to give up a lot. It's the law of sacrifice from John Maxwell. He talks about this law of sacrifice. You got to give up to go up. You got to give up more to stay there. Then if you want to go higher, you got to give up even more.
Wow.
And then if I want to help you,
yeah, because
you see me succeed, now I got to start giving up for you. It ain't got nothing to do with me except for I want to help you.
Bear one another's burdens. That's a biblical scripture that.
Well, and it's so true, right?
Yeah.
In leadership or life. Eleanor Roosevelt said, I am who I am today because of choices that I made yesterday. Right? And taking ownership of that is hard for all of us. We are exactly where we are supposed to be in life based on our choices in the past. But that means that where we want to go tomorrow is based on the choices that we make today.
Wow. That's good. All right, so we answered about 3 questions there, but that's okay because we're gonna go to this one right here. Okay, here's one. I love this one. This will bring a story out. Can you share a moment when you realized that you were making an impact? Now, think about that. You may think about a person or a team of people or each other or whatever, but a moment when you realized, like a light bulb went off and you said, hey, this is working, or I'm making an impact. I just made a difference here.
Almost every day. And that's an incredible blessing.
Wow.
I spoke for a small group of women Thursday night, and I had a lady come up to me after I spoke. I really wasn't even there to share my story. I was there speaking on behalf of a nonprofit. So I only spoke for just a couple minutes, give an update. And I had a lady come up afterward, and she said, "You won't remember me, you won't recognize me, but I used to come to your group fitness classes, and it's been years since I taught group fitness. Years." She said, "But I used to come to your group fitness classes," and she said, "I was just steps away from a heart attack, but you just inspired me." And she said, "I went on and I've made some changes. I've lost like 60-something pounds, and I'm off all of medication." And it was that moment that I thought, and Mac always says, when we touch a life, we don't always feel it. But every single day, we are impacting someone. The only question is positive or negative. Now, we are incredibly blessed that we do sometimes hear from those people in an audience that say, "Hey, you touched me," or "Your story touched me." And probably for me, because maybe not just, maybe it's different, just in different ways for each of us. But my story tends to touch a lot of women, not just women. Sometimes it's men as well. But it's a different level of personal, right? And so perhaps that's why I hear a little more of people who come and say, "Hey, that really impacted me." So we're incredibly blessed, and I can think of that almost every day where I'm just like, wow, that it's such a privilege and such a gift, but it's also a responsibility, right? It's a stewardship to make the most of every single day, because if we want to make that impact, we have to be intentional about it.
100%.
You can't get back your time and energy, and what you do with it is going to determine the seed, the fruit that you receive, right? What you're planting today is the harvest of tomorrow. So, it's an incredible opportunity, but we have to be intentional to use it.
Planting seeds, sowing seeds. I love it.
Yeah, so it is a privilege to get those stories. I mean, you don't never know when the phone rings or text message, vibrates the phone and you check your text message. You don't never. Those come quite often for us, and it is a blessing for us because that's the impact we want to make is for people to be impacted. One reason we write books, and I heard John say it a long time ago, it extends your reach. People read my books that never going to meet. Now podcasts, same way. I think I got like 120 countries at some point have listened to my podcast. That's just crazy for me to even think. First of all, I'm wondering, they thinking, what kind of language is this guy speaking?
They're looking for a translator.
That's a different kind of English than I've ever heard. But for one of the stories, you want me to share a story?
Yes.
So it'll go back to the last episode when we was talking about between stimulus and response.
Yes.
Human beings had a freedom to pause and choose their response. So we were up in Princeton, New Jersey, speaking to an asphalt paving company. And we share that fairly early on. If we're speaking for 4 hours, that'll be in the first couple of hours before they have a break. And so one of the guys, mostly was the CEO and the top level leaders and managers and those kind of folks were there. But there were some of the guys who work in the field that are managers or potential managers. They were all also there. And one guy, man, he was in his regular work clothes. I mean, he's still muddied up from being in the trenches and doing that stuff. And he come down the aisle after break, and he was charging. He was charging straight down that aisle, and had his eyebrows down a little. He had a teardrop tattoo, and he's a rough looking cat like some of the blue collar folks are, and he's looking at me serious, and he's kind of charging down through there. I'm like, what's this dude up to?
I'm gonna come get you.
I'm trying to think, in a hurry, what did I say might have offended him, but he come up there and he looked at me and he pointed straight at my face. He said, "You ought to be a doctor." I said, "What?" That ain't nothing that I was expecting. He said, "You ought to be a doctor." I said, "Well, why are you saying that, man?" I said, "First, what's your name, right? Relationship.
Yeah.
What's your name? Because it matters. Kenny. I know who Kenny is.
Yeah.
But, yeah, connecting. I said, "What's your name?" He's like, "Larry." I said, "Larry, what in the world would make you say I need to be a doctor?" And then he went into storytelling. He said, "Man, I've been in the pen for all kinds of problems." He said, "I got anger issues. I've had anger issues my whole life." He said, "What you said a while ago," he said, "I've been across the desk from all kind of doctors. And what you said a minute ago connected the dots for me. And there ain't no doctor ever connected the dots for me. So whatever these doctors are that I've been meeting, they ain't got what you got." So that's why I was saying,
wow,
you ought to be a doctor. And so what I had taught was I kept, teaching that lesson that day. And what he was talking about was, as I shared between stimulus and response, human beings have the freedom to pause and choose their response. I touched on that means we're responsible, which means we're responsible. And then I started telling the crowd, as I'm learning this, and I don't mean learning it in a day. I mean learning it over days and
Over
weeks
time.
and months.
Years.
And it's everything's starting to connect the dots for me.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if I read it, if I thought it, if I heard it on a podcast or audio book. But somewhere I put all this stuff together, and I've been the kind of person, still am, exact same person. Nobody on this planet is gonna control me.
I tried a few times.
I'm sure.
Hey, them other 3 ex-wives did too, but that's a different story. But we can talk about that if we need to. I'm better now, right? We've been together 25 years because I figured out my problem. Same problem I had with the wives was the same problem I had with my son.
Yeah.
Me, capital
Absolutely.
M-E. So what I had taught though was, I started I'm always wanting to validate everything. I don't just read it and then start regurgitating it. I got to validate it. That is it true? And so I started thinking, I don't want somebody to control me. And then I started, it's just part of the growth process. It provokes thought, raises your awareness. That's why we talk. That's why we speak. We ask questions. We write books to provoke thought, raise awareness. I don't know what you're going to do with it. That's up to you. But our goal is to provoke thought and raise awareness. And that's what I've been doing for 17 years, mentoring myself through these books. And so I started to realize when, in the old days, when I thought other people was controlling me, I'd say, you trying to push my button. Everybody trying to push my button, flip my switch, make me get angry. Some people wanted to watch me get angry because, friends would be trying to get me going and
I
stuff.
think you needed new friends.
Yeah, I don't have any of those friends anymore. But I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. But so what he was talking about, though, is I said, you ever, and I asked the audience this when I'm teaching it. I said, you ever had somebody try to get you angry? They're really trying to get you angry. And for whatever crazy reason, you may not have heard all the stuff I've been talking and teaching, but you didn't get angry. What happened to them? Pretty much the crowd starts saying it. They got angry. They got mad. Mm-hmm. I said, that's usually what happens. When somebody is really trying to get you to get angry and you don't get angry, at some point they end up getting angry. And I said, when I started figuring that out, I'm saying, why is that? And I figured out because they're trying to control me. They're trying to make me get angry. That's control. Them kind of influence me to do something they want me to do. They want me to get angry and upset. Soon as I didn't get angry and upset, I kept control. Now I had control. Now they angry and upset because I got control. The opposite happened. So, but for me, like I just said, I taught this that day. Nobody ever's going to control me. Used to, it was with anger how I made sure that didn't happen. I mean, I was the craziest chihuahua. Everybody, unless they wanted to die, they need to leave me alone because one of us going to die. I ain't going to quit. You gotta quit if you want to live. I ain't going to quit so you can live. You got to quit. And that's who I was my whole life. People don't understand when they see me today who I used to be. But what I figured out was that is the truth. So whenever I would get angry, like I'm just telling you, I used to get angry.
Yeah.
At some point in my growth, I figured out whenever that was happening, I was handing control of me over on a silver platter.
Right.
To anybody, anywhere. And once I realized that, I do not want somebody to control me. Mm-hmm. And now that I'm capable and understand that was all I needed to know is I don't want somebody to control me. So I ain't going to get angry because as soon as I get angry, I'm handing you control.
Yeah.
That ain't going to happen.
Right.
And that's what Larry heard that day that caused him to come up and tell me I need to be a doctor. I don't think I need to be a doctor, but that's what he thought that day.
Well, there's other people right now that are hearing what you're saying, and it's resonating with them because they have anger issues. I mean, let's just be real. And so learning to understand that,
it's powerful.
It's very powerful, and that can change someone's life. And so if you're listening right now and you think, well, man, I have anger issues too, then really listen to what he just said. Because, yes, we're here to talk about leadership, but what we're really here for is to talk about the impact that you have. And what Mack is saying is that your impact can be greater if you learn to control your anger.
Yeah, you're going to have more influence.
Wouldn't you agree? So you learn to control your anger, and you can have a bigger influence.
Jeremy, that one principle right there, I mean, I've spent my entire life working in the blue-collar fields and industries, and our even though my background's manufacturing, our biggest segment of our business is actually construction. Manufacturing folks don't spend much time and money invested in their people, but construction companies actually do. And what I know is there's a tremendous amount of blue-collar folks on the front lines in entry-level positions. Some of them are young, some of them are middle-aged, some of them are older. And if they don't ever learn how to harness their anger, they're going to stay in the frontline positions, even though they aspire. There's nothing wrong with being in a frontline position. If that's where you want to be, just be the best you can be.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people who are in those frontline positions, especially if they've been there multiple years, that don't want to be. And the longer they're there, the angrier they get. And the reason they're still there is because they're angry to start with.
Well, and I like to say, control of self is the first step on the ladder of influence, right? If I cannot control me, I'm never going to be able to climb to those next levels of having influence. Because we think about it from our perspective. You've never had somebody get mad and yell and blame you for something you thought, man, I like and trust you a whole lot more now. Like it doesn't work like that. But it's having that insight to know we have to master those emotions. There's nothing wrong with having the emotions. We're human. That's normal. But it's Andy Stanley who reminds us our feelings can be terrible leaders.
Oh, yeah.
Right? We've all said or done something in the heat of the moment and thought, shouldn't have said that, shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
But the more often we can get that concept right and just say, they're there, but they don't have to dictate how I respond, the easier it becomes.
And I just add something you mentioned, you were saying we're talking about leadership, but now we're talking about this personal stuff. And for us, everything we teach is personal development is the foundation for leadership development. If a company is doing leadership development and they ain't talking about the personal development, they ain't doing leadership development. They're doing something else. Because until I can lead myself well, I don't deserve to lead you at all. I ain't going to get to, not with authentic influence. If I'm a boss, I might, but...
It's funny you say that because when I first went on this mission to teach leadership, I had Daniel and Maddie were my co-host, and we were talking one day, and Daniel looked up at me and he said, dude, all this stuff we're talking about is just about being a better person.
That's all it is.
That's 100% exactly right.
And so the leadership mandates, which one day I'm going to write me a book, by the way.
Man.
I've been working on it. Leadership mandates that I've been teaching for all these years, they're humility and, all the things that integrity and honesty and all the things that we call leadership mandates here at Impact.
Yeah.
Those are things that make you a better person,
Yeah.
which, in my opinion, allow you to be a leader.
Yeah.
Because you can't be a leader if you're not worth following.
That's exactly right.
So
that's good stuff, and we touching on that,
Yeah.
if you don't mind.
No, go.
We also say character development equals leadership development. It's the same thing, and we tell people if you're in an organization and they're talking about leadership development, they're not talking about character. You don't ever even hear the word character. They're not talking about leadership development. Most likely they're teaching you management and calling it leadership, managing people.
100%.
And you don't have to have a high degree of character to manage people. You just got to be the boss. Anybody can do that because you're controlling people's, their pay, their promotions, when they can get off on Friday to go watch kids' ball game early, and all that. You got all kind of control, and that's what I call artificial influence.
Right. That's right. So, let's see. Okay, here's a good one. We got to ask this one. Who has been a major influence in your life, and why? Now, you can name anybody you want to, but anybody that's been a major influence in your life. I'm not talking about the guy at the grocery store, but I guess he could. But major influence means, in my opinion, and I'm just going to say that they've consistently impacted the way that you go about your life. Someone or two people or one of each.
Me, so probably the most important number one person is that lady sitting right there.
That would have been my answer too. Is he's the one?
Okay, don't use each other. No, I'm kidding. Whoever, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to do three if you let me do three.
Yeah.
But Ria's a primary because a lot of people ask me sometimes, why do I do what I do? Why did I make these changes? What I'm saying. Some people say, what caused you to actually change? And the generic reason always, the answer is because I started realizing when I got better, people were motivated by me, and then I could influence people to get better. I never realized that anybody cared how I was living my life, not that kind of way. But that's part of, Ria made me a better person for a bunch of reasons. Her story connected a lot of dots and really locked me into becoming a Christian. And I tell it from the stage all the time. You heard her story last time. I mean, all the stuff, and she's got 3 books on her story and a TEDx talk, and for somebody who might want to go hear some of her story and learn more about it. But the stuff her father did with her was horrific. Whatever somebody's imagining right now, they ain't even close.
Oh my God.
They ain't got a clue what she went through from age 12 to 19, and then her mother blamed her for it. So that's her parents. So Ria's had enough people in her life let her down that just her being in my life caused me to get better, because I wasn't going to let her down. You know, that's way before I started reading leadership. We met in 2000. I didn't discover this stuff till 2008. But I started, and it's God thing. I didn't know all that back then, but it's the coincidences of us coming together was God trying to help her, but also help me. It took about 3 months before I realized what Ria was going through. And when I asked her, that's a hard thing to ask somebody. And, you know, if that's happening to you, literally, like straight up question. And I did. And she said that's the first time anybody ever asked her. But that's the day it stopped. And she didn't go home after that. I made sure, you know, I got it right that day. But our entire life, even today still, I want to help her become independent where she don't need me, because the way we met and when we met and all the stuff we went through, I never knew if she was with me because she didn't have a choice at the beginning. So I want to make sure that she can go out and become totally independent. That way, if she's with me, she's with me because she wants to be.
Yeah, so you wanted to become better for her.
Yeah, I wanted to help her. Same reason, like in 2012, I quit drinking alcohol. When I raised my hand, a couple months later after that, I raised my hand, accepted Christ with John Maxwell. Mm-hmm. That day, I quit using profanity. I tell people all the time on the stage, I'm the guy that if I used to say a one-word sentence, it had 2 words of profanity. That's the only way I could talk, man. And they still, you know, a lot of blue-collar guys like that, a lot of Marines like that, infantry Marines, they drink a lot, they cuss a lot, and I don't care if they do that. I just ain't going to do it, because I'm setting myself up to a higher standard, not because I think I'm better than anybody, but I want to be living what I'm teaching.
Yeah.
And that's what causes me to become a better person, is because of my growth and my integrity matters. Who I am matters. I ain't judging you. I ain't judging anybody.
Yeah.
Y'all go in the world out there and go do whatever you think you need to do to get better. You may not have ever drank, or you may drink every day. I don't know, but you know. And you may not ever quit, but you may change 50 other things in your life that makes your life better. You may not ever quit using profanity. And I don't care who drinks. I don't necessarily like to be around it. And the only reason is, if I'm talking to you, I mean, I used to drink. I know. I used to drink a lot, but I knew after one beer or one mixed drink, I could feel it start changing how I'm thinking.
Yep.
So if I'm talking to somebody, I don't care if they drink, but when I'm talking to them, I don't want to be drinking, because I want 100% clear mind. I want to talk to the real person.
Yep.
You know, I don't want to hear the stuff that alcohol makes you talk about. But I don't judge people. But I just tell that story because it's part of me trying to be a model, a role model. Everybody's a model. So the 2 people besides Ria, and I'll let her go, is obviously Stephen Covey, and then the second one, John Maxwell.
Nice.
Covey taught me and a lot of people, when they hear me talk about the 7 Habits book, they want to go read it. Then they say, man, I couldn't read that book. Because I tell people, it makes your head hurt. That book make your head hurt.
Yeah.
John's book are cool. They're kind of like my books. They're easy to read. But I learned so much from Covey. And then I simplified, like you said, it in my book. And Ria's books are the same way. And we hadn't shared, I don't think, with your listeners. We got like 35 books. And they're simple, though. And so when I discovered John Maxwell, he's a pastor. You know, his dad was a pastor and a president of a university. That ain't the life I come from. But John was just funny. He poked fun at people in a good kind of way. He was using humor and just being a kind of like a country boy. Mm-hmm. Covey was always in a suit, speaking like a professor, like he was. Mm-hmm. As soon as I saw Maxwell, though, I said, "Oh, I can do what Covey does this way." And this way really just meant I can just be me.
Yeah. And
do it my way. And the people who are attracted to me will be attracted to me. The other people ain't for me to help. They're for somebody else to help.
Right.
So those 2 are the primary, beyond Ria, those 2.
So 3, that's good. So I've asked this question to a lot of guys, a lot of people, and sometimes they say your dad or your mom. And, you know, at the end of the day, whether it be a personal friend or a wife or a teacher, typically leaders have people that have invested in them and that they followed. And so I like to talk about the levels of leadership, and I like to incorporate who you're following. And so, Ria?
Yeah, so Mac is number one, right? And probably that's the same answer you'd get from a lot of spouses.
Yeah.
Because a lot of who I am today is because of him. And just he has always helped me just be the person that I wanted to be, right?
Nice.
And a lot of people who are in my position aren't that fortunate, right? A lot of people who are leaving a bad situation as I was end up with someone just as bad or worse because they don't have self-worth. They don't have good boundaries. They don't have any idea of what a healthy relationship versus a toxic one looks like. And you know, if you're a person of faith, it was really just, it's just a God thing that I ended up with someone who was a person of character, right?
Wow.
And I got to say though, I had terrible character in some areas. Character is not just one thing. Character is every single thing that you are. It's how you do what you do. It's why you do it. It's who you do it with. It's what you don't do. So when she's saying I had good character, I did relative to some things, but there was other things that was terrible. I mean,
well, you weren't that bad. I married you.
well, I was better by the time you met me. I'd got over some of it, but
When you talk about people who've impacted us, I mean, I've been fortunate to have good mentors along the way. But I think a defining moment in my leadership journey was she wasn't even a formal mentor. In fact, I was her boss at the time, but she was older than me. And I remember this moment. I was working in a doctor's office, and we hadn't opened the office yet. So before patients, before the phones. And I don't even know how the conversation started, but she said something that really kind of just was one of those light bulb moments. She said, Ria, you really just act like you don't care about us. Like you're trying to just control everything in the office. You're trying to control us. And she was right. And it wasn't that I was a bad person. I just didn't know what I didn't know about leadership. I wanted to manage. I was good at management. I was good at managing the things, and I tried to manage the people. And, you know, it was an aha moment to go, whoa, like I didn't have a lot of humility. Mac and I talk about the Andy Griffith show as a kind of a leadership show, if you know the principles, right? I was Barney. I wanted to walk around and tell people what to do. That's why I went to college for a leadership degree. I wanted to be the boss. And I realized it is more about the relationships, right? And again, it was kind of just that aha moment that I needed to be someone different, right? Leadership isn't about doing something different. It's being someone different. And maybe I was doing some of the right things, but I wasn't the right person at that point. Now, I not too long after that, I moved on to a new position in a new organization, and I was working in compliance at that organization. So I was responsible for everything. Compliance is all about the policies and the procedures, the federal regulations. And so I was responsible for everything, but I didn't have any authority. And I learned how much I didn't know about truly influencing people, right? So it's kind of a trial by fire. So, you know.
That is a trial by fire,
It
by the way.
was.
So
It was.
hang on, I want to stop you for a minute
Sure.
so that the audience understands what you just said. So you were responsible for the outcomes of what you were doing, but you had no authority
Yep.
over it.
No authority.
That
over
is
it.
a terrible place to be.
about 3,000 people.
Well, yes, it's a tough place to be, but it taught me a lot.
Well, absolutely, because you had to learn
I had to learn it.
influence.
I had to learn it.
Wow. That is, I've been there before, by the way. That's why it resonated with me. And again, when I said that's a terrible place to be, I felt like it was because, you know, again, you're responsible, but you can't influence it. And so how do you make it successful? And, well, I'm sorry, you had no authority.
Yeah.
And so how do you make it successful? And that's through influence. But that is a painful place to be.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was. And I made a lot of mistakes and a lot of tough lessons. But I think I was in a place to learn those lessons because of what Midge had shared with me. And so it was pretty cool years later to go back to her and go, hey, you really impacted me with those few words, right?
Wow.
And then third for me, I learned a lot about the language of leadership and influence from John Maxwell's The 5 Levels of Leadership. Because for me, it gave me a structure. For the first time, I realized why building relationships was important. And again, in that role where I needed to build influence, I was in that position of I got to learn, and I got to learn quickly. So it really helped accelerate that leadership journey for me.
Okay. Very interesting. So John Maxwell's on both of y'all's lists. He's also on mine. I've read lots of his books and listen to his stuff. He is a phenomenal teacher.
Yeah, that
Great.
book Ria said, that's out of all the reading I've been doing every day for 17 years, 7 Habits is still my number one book. My second one is 5 Levels of Leadership from John's number 2, and then Covey's son, Stephen M.R. Covey, Speed of Trust. Those are my top 3 ever books that I've ever read.
You know, it's interesting. You can read these books, and then you can put them up on the shelf, and then you can go back and read them again in a couple of years, and it's like
Yes.
you actually need to read them again.
Absolutely.
You get more out of it.
Yeah, I
because
read
you've
all-
grown, hopefully.
Yeah,
I've read all those books multiple times, and I'll read them again multiple times. And the reason is what you just shared. When I teach people that, I teach them, like I say, let's say all you know is the English language. You ain't even familiar that there's another language. You've been somehow in a bubble. There's nothing but the English language. I could hold up a sheet of paper with the Spanish language on it, and all you don't know is Spanish. You just know it's not English. And then I could say, oh, this is Spanish. There's a whole another language you don't know about. And then I could say, you say, well, I'm going to learn about that. You could take one class, one Spanish class, and then I could show you that if you had never seen it, and you would know it was Spanish. You wouldn't know much about it, but you'd know now it's not English, it's Spanish.
right.
The sheet of paper hadn't changed in that day, but you have changed. And that's what happens. You know, you keep learning Spanish, you're going to realize the letters and the words, and then the hidden meaning between the words, and the sentences even have hidden meaning, all that stuff. Same way with leadership. Leadership's kind of like English, but it's hard. There's so many principles, and they all go together. English language don't have but 26 letters, but it's got like 400,000 or 500,000 words, and then you put the words together, and they start having meanings interconnected, and then how the person is saying it. And that's one way when we talk about leadership, we share with people that example of the language, because somebody learns the 26 letters in the alphabet, they ain't learned nothing about the English language yet.
Right.
That's like we sharing a couple of principles with people here.
Yeah,
And you got to know these principles, because each one of them adds up. To build trust, you got to get everything right in that situation. You may be getting stuff wrong over here in life, but that ain't part of this situation at the moment.
right,
To build trust in this situation, I got to get everything right here right.
right.
Guess how much I got to get wrong to create distrust?
Just one.
Just one.
Yeah,
And that's how important all these. There's thousands and thousands, however many principles there are, and you ain't got to get but one wrong to create distrust. And
right.
And I would share with you, you was talking about Ria. When I was leading lean in company, especially as a consultant, but even in the company where I worked, it was the same way. I had responsibility for process improvement throughout the entire company. Nobody reported to me. They didn't have to do a single thing I said, especially as a consultant. I was not even in the appearance of being in an authority role as a consultant. I walked in, they could have not worked with me if they didn't like me, and I couldn't build trust, and I thought I was the man and I knew everything, and that ain't how I did it though. But if I did it that way, Friday comes around after this 1 week event, we would have not done anything. They would have already been telling the leaders all week long, this guy's a jerk, he's an idiot. You know, I wouldn't been invited back. But I never had a week like that. Every week was phenomenal. But the same way Ria, you know, quality, safety, lean, compliance, all those things are areas where somebody somewhere has got all the responsibility for getting everyone to buy in and execute, but they have no authority. And if you don't learn how to lead, you ain't got a chance. It ain't going to happen. But it's the same exact principles that every leader ought to be using. Like when we teach about leadership, we're teaching set your moral authority to the side and lead with, set your formal authority to the side and lead with moral authority.
Right.
It's the same way. That's why we can teach leadership to anybody, because it's got zero to do with a position.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, I'll never forget when I was young and dumb. I for whatever reason, and I wanted to be in charge. I wanted to do great things. Right. So, and I've told that story before. When I was young, I wanted to be in charge, and it's like, yeah, you moron. Well, because I wanted to make my dad proud. Right. So there's always a reason, and I don't know why. I think we're called to lead maybe at some level, and then we learn to lead. But anyway, we won't get into all that yet. Essentially, I wanted to lead. I wanted to be in charge, and I had to realize what it took to do that. And it wasn't being appointed. And so I went to my boss one time, and I won't say his name. I was like, how do you expect me? Because I asked him, I said, why don't you make me in charge? Why don't you give me the title? And he said, you don't need a title to lead. And I said, well, yeah, I do, because these people ain't going to follow. And he said, you got to learn to follow.
Yeah,
And I was like, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said to me. You know, like at the time I was thinking, that's so dumb. I mean, I literally walked out of his office. That was dumb. I don't need to learn to follow to lead. But now, looking back, you do. You have to learn to follow before you can influence.
Another thing that I say is followership is the foundation for leadership. All these, it's the same principles. He said it, you know, I say it a different way, but it's the key. You got to follow well. I mean,
That's
someone
right.
who doesn't follow well, they may become a boss, but they ain't going to ever be a leader until they learn how to follow well.
No, and something you said earlier, Ria, you said, you know, I don't know how you said it. You may can circle back to it. But managing people, it's not something that we do.
Mm-mm.
You manage processes and you
Things.
lead people.
Yes.
That's right. And so people, I hear people all the time, I manage this group. I manage that group. I manage these 4 people. And I'm like, bro, you ain't managing them people. That's impossible.
Because people have emotions and feelings, right?
Yep.
You know, we can manage a thing, we can manage a process because it doesn't have an opinion. But the moment I try to move your chair and you're sitting in it, then you've got an opinion about that.
Oh, yeah.
And that's when we don't use the terminology really well in our culture, right? We call it leadership and we are teaching management practices. And they're both important, right? You have to have both character for leadership and competency for the management. You have to have both.
Yep.
But it's the character, who we are as a person, that's determining how we interact with other people, right? Who we are on the inside is what people experience on the outside.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's good. So, all right, I got a good one for you here. Okay, this is for all of our leaders out there that are listening, and that they always want to know, how do you motivate people? Now, when I say how do you motivate people, how do you influence people without authority? How do you make them want to do it? What do you do? Give me a tangible way, a way that someone could take this little nugget back to work Monday and start implementing and see change.
Well, the first thing I always say is you can't make somebody do something. Most of the time, though, we can influence them if we'll take responsibility for leading them in a different way, right? But at the end of the day, you can't force somebody. But I have to take ownership as the leader for what do I need to do differently to inspire you? And that's the hard thing. The one thing you have to do is look in the mirror and say, what do I need to do different? Because I can't fix or control someone else. How much time and energy in life do we spend trying to fix or control or improve someone else? And if we would just focus on self and what we need to do differently, most of the time we can build the trust, build our influence, and inspire them to want to follow us.
So what I'm hearing you say right now is that you have to inspire them to want to do it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's say, for the story's sake, let's say that you run a Lowe's home improvement store, and you're the manager there, and every single day I come in, I'm the employee, and I come in and I'm late every day, and I can't get my life together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What do you do to make me want to be there on time?
Well, the first thing I would do is I would help you by teaching you some of the concepts and principles that'll help you be more successful as a person, right? And not with the approach that I want to fix you so that you're at work on time. I want to help understand what is it that you need that you can manage your life better. And I mean, that's where it starts, right? But it's going to have to be from the relationship standpoint. If I care about you as a person and your success as an individual, it's not about the job. So I have to keep that relationship piece intact before I can influence you. So hopefully have already built that relationship up.
Well, you may be talking to, and there may be somebody out there listening right now that says, hey, yeah, keep going. I've had this exact situation, okay? Because that's what we're doing. We're helping these people. And what you just said was the first thing you have to do is connect with them.
Absolutely.
So the manager, if they haven't connected with them, must not discipline them until they've connected. You agree?
I agree. And I've had this situation, a very similar situation. It wasn't a Lowe's.
I just threw that out there. So this was not per Lowe's, but yeah.
It happens everywhere.
I had someone she was on intermittent FMLA leave.
Okay.
Which, if you're not familiar with that, it's not the type where you're just off for 3 months. It's, today's not a good day. I can't come in because of a medical or family reason. The problem was that she just didn't show up for work. Like, it wasn't late. It didn't show up. And this happened a couple of times, and I was like, you can't just not show up like that. I get it that you have FMLA, right? I want to honor and respect that, but we got a job to do, right? You can't just not show up. And, my first reaction was I wanted to discipline her. And I wanted to just write her up. In fact, I had some suggestions from above leadership that said, just write her up. She's not showing up, and she didn't call in. And so, I said, that's not going to fix it. Mm-hmm. So we just sat down and I said, help me understand, why you're not showing up, right? Or why you didn't even call me. And she's like, I could feel a migraine coming on. I took some medicine, just slept, just slept through it. And so I said, I get all that. What can we do, right? I'm just asking her the question. Help me as a leader figure out a solution so that I don't have to write you up, because I don't want to do that. What can we do? How can we figure this out? She's like, I don't want to call you at 1:00 in the morning. I said, well, great. Can you text me? Mm-hmm. Or email me so that when I get to work or when I see that, I know you're not going to be here and I know why. Mm-hmm. And I can trust that. And it worked beautifully, right? I had to, using those 7 habits, I had to seek first to understand, right? Not going into it with a punitive, but help me understand what else is going on and how can we work toward a solution. But I had to have that relationship piece intact so that she could trust me. Mm-hmm. So the first thing is, always apply the principles, build that relationship, seek first to understand, help them, right? Help that person as an individual. And then I think a lot of times helping someone else understand, this is important, right? If you have a job to do and being on time is important, it's important to your success. Not just to your success here in this organization, but to your success in life, because if I can't count on you to be here, then I can't trust you, right? And I'll share with you, I think it was Simon Sinek who shared this, and it was so powerful. He calls it the FBI. Feedback, behavior, and impact. And there you go. That's that word. That's one of your favorites, right?
Yeah.
Talk about the behavior. You're 15 minutes late. I feel like I can't trust you. And the impact is I'm not going to give you more responsibility, or this is limiting your opportunities in this department or company to move up, right?
Wow.
So I've tied that situation to a very specific behavior they can identify, a feeling of this is what it's causing, and the impact and the result for you is you're hurting your own self, right? Not to mention you're letting the team down. We could talk about that, but it works positively too. If someone speaks up in a meeting with a great idea, you can go to them and say, hey, I felt very proud of you for you because you spoke up in the meeting, and the result is you'll have more influence in future meetings, right? So feedback, behavior, and impact.
Wow,
or
that's
feeling.
Good. That's perfect. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
That's good. So connect. So we have an employee that's struggling to meet our expectations. The first thing we do is connect. And after we connect, we care and we seek to understand, like you said. And then you begin to mentor that employee through the issue that they have, right? And then you see to it that they fix it. Yeah.
So most of the time in that situation you just described, the employee, the team, whatever level, they're not getting any development, personal growth or leadership development. They're not getting any. Most of the time the leader's not getting any. So when we just share one thing, somebody may go try this one thing and it doesn't work. They say, well, I tried what Mack and Ria said and it didn't work. Well, that's because we don't know what's about to happen when you go do this one thing. And if you ain't prepared for the difference, then you're not going to be prepared. It's not going to work because everything's dynamic, it's fluid, it's constantly changing. And one of the principles I teach in Blue Collar Leadership Supervision, it's one of the chapters in that book is titled Lead with Questions, Not Directions. It's like Ria, that's what she was doing right there. She was leading with questions, not directions.
Yeah.
But the boss, the manager who's in a hurry, wants to go out and dictate.
Yep.
Just be a dictator. Be Barney Fife, not Andy Griffith, right? Andy Griffith walks in, puts his hand on your shoulder, and starts talking to you. He's connecting, building a relationship.
Yep.
Barney's been running around like a nut, for an hour or two. Can't get nothing done. Ain't nobody paying him any attention. That's what a lot of leaders are doing is Barney. They Barney Fifing everybody to death. And it doesn't mean they're bad people, but it definitely means that they're bad leaders. And Ria and I was with a group in Georgia. It was at a $1 billion company that we were supporting. We went in there for 10 days. It actually took 110 leaders through that book I just mentioned, Blue Collar Leadership and Supervision. We covered 3 chapters a day in what we call a high-impact book study. And anybody that's listening can go to bluecollarleadership.com/book study training and watch a free 45-minute video of how to facilitate with anybody's book. But we were there. Can you tell that little story real quick? That guy was ready to fire somebody. He's done been through, 10 days in a row.
Yeah.
We went through with all these leaders, including the CEO of this $1 billion company. He was on one of the 14 or 15 teams that we were leading. We would just do one right after the other every day, 3 chapters with each team over and over. And one guy was in there, in between or early or afterward or something. There was a break, and he's like, "What do you do if you got this person?" Basically, the one that
Very
you described.
same scenario.
Yeah.
And before I share that, I just wanted to wrap up with, as the leader, you do have ultimate responsibility for getting the job done, right? Hopefully you can coach and mentor that person. And 99.9% of the time, if the leader leads, the situation can get resolved.
That's
But-
right.
There might be a few people on the planet who just, for whatever reason, don't have the values that are in alignment or just can't, right? At some level, they need to develop themselves. And as the leader, at some point, you have to make a hard decision of, if I can't continue to grow with them and develop them and help them grow, then I still have to take responsibility.
Ria, I got to jump in.
Jump in.
I didn't finish that
'Cause I
I
know
know
it's powerful.
you probably on the clock or something. Worried about that clock.
No, you're good.
So-
We're good.
The whole big picture of this, when we're talking about really leadership, high impact leadership, if I could show anybody an org chart that goes all the way down to the scheme, got the entry level people on it, and I could say, hey, if there's a problem right here with this entry level person, where do you think the problem is relative to leadership? Anybody's going to say the one that's right above them, except for usually that leader that's right above them, right? Because he's
It's
either
easy
got to
to
blame
blame.
them or blame me. But when you're from the outside looking at it, one of the things we teach is, and there's really more when I'm talking about culture, is we talk about engagement, disengagement, and doing employee engagement surveys and all this stuff. And people spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, some big companies, on that stuff, and do an employee survey, and then they don't do anything. Because doing the survey is management activity. It's a thing and a process. Sign a check, give permission, let somebody do it. But actually addressing it is a leadership deal, improving things because of the survey. If they actually was leading, they wouldn't have to do the survey in the first place. But the principle I want to share there is disengagement below is nothing but a symptom of the root cause, which is disengagement above. Like if I got that employee you just described, yes, 100% that employee is an issue and has an issue and they're responsible. But for the organization and my team, I'm responsible.
Correct.
Why are they on the team? Why do we let it get to that? Because a lot of times when we go speak, some leader, when we're speaking on leadership to, it could be a room of CEOs or business owners, HR managers. We also speak to the entry-level folks too, everybody. And a lot of times pretty common for a leader to come up and start telling me about the person you just described, their person. And once they get done and they calm down and they get themselves worked up and then we'll know all about them, first question I always ask them, what leadership book you reading, sir? Guess what the number one answer is?
I
ain't.
That's what I was looking for. I was looking for you to tell me, well, Jeremy, I would go talk to the leader of that person.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that's it's always, and John Maxwell says this, everything rises and falls on leadership.
Yeah, because I didn't.
It does.
I didn't finish it, but let's
Go
say
ahead.
if we at the bottom, we at the entry level workforce.
Yeah.
They got an issue, and we could get everybody to agree. Okay, if there's an issue here, the responsibility is on that leader. So there's an issue with this leader.
Yeah.
Well, okay, why is there an issue with this leader? Guess where you got to go now? To the next leader.
That's right.
Guess where you always going to end up?
To the top.
To the top.
As always.
Or you could say to the bottom, because the bottom, the person at the bottom supports everybody. Well,
yeah, in the
should be.
inverted pyramid.
Yeah.
Where the CEO's on the bottom
That's
of the
right.
chart.
That's the way it's supposed to be. And that's not the way that some people look at it.
in a leadership world. Finish that story real quick.
Go ahead, Ria.
This was powerful that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we had a supervisor. He's like, I just can't get this person. I think it was literally like being on time.
Yeah.
And so we shared with him some of the same principles that we just covered. And he went back that day, and he came back the next
Because
morning.
the point was he wanted to know what to do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
He just,
oh, yeah.
he
We
like-
said, go connect, go seek first to understand, stop trying to tell them and stop trying to fix them, stop doing all that stuff.
Look in the
Go
mirror.
be a leader. Just go try to understand them.
Yeah.
And he came back the next day, and he was like, it worked. I mean, he was just so super excited. He's like, I just sat down and kind of just said, hey, what's going on? Why is this a problem? And I didn't know she was going through a tough divorce, and she's got to get the kids to, and so
Being
And
harassed
He didn't know.
he didn't know.
See, that's
because he wasn't leading the
That's
beginning.
right.
wasn't-
That's
he
right.
That's
wasn't
why he was in the
leading.
class.
he was managing people, wasn't he?
Yeah.
But it was like a light bulb switch had gone off for him. Then
Yeah.
and he was like gung ho from then on because he's like, man, this stuff works. Like,
Oh, absolutely.
he had got just immediate results. And when you see that person, if they will, apply the principles are like gravity, right? Gravity always applies, even if I don't believe in gravity, or I tell you gravity's too soft, right? Gravity is a principle. Leadership principles are the same way, but it's like learning a language, right? If we move to another country and we don't learn the language, it's tough to be effective. But if we can learn the language, we can be more effective. If we learn the language of leadership and influencing people, we can be more impactful and effective at home and at work.
That what you just said is the reason this show was born. And so
Love it.
Oh, I love it. So wow. Okay, so has y'all's leadership style evolved over time? I mean, would you agree, and this kind of, you just teed me up for this. Leadership can be taught to anybody. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, one thing we say, and I don't know if this is what she's about to say, but I always, when we're speaking, I say, I can teach you
Yeah.
leadership
That's
in a
what I would
room.
say.
You can read leadership. You can learn it. I mean, you can be taught it by a book, by a podcast, by a person speaking. I can teach it in this room, but you ain't going to learn it in this room. You got to go out and do the hard work of figuring it out. Do what Ria said. That guy could have went down there that day and tried to understand, and then the lady could have got defensive about it, and then he could have got defensive about it because he needed to know about the pause button and wasn't using it, and then it could have went south, right? And then he wouldn't have had that story. But he had learned at least enough and was a good enough character person to be able to get that right. But yeah, 100% leadership can be taught. But this kind of leadership, you got to volunteer to want to learn it, right? Anybody could put somebody in a room, have us come speak to them. But if that person don't want to learn it, it don't matter how many times they come in that room. They ain't gonna learn nothing about leadership unless they want to learn it. It's a choice.
It's a choice. It's kind of like, so then you're saying you can be taught leadership. So if someone's out there right now and they're a leader and they're thinking, well, I've been trying to teach leadership to my whoever, and they just don't want to lead. What do you say to that person? How do you create the desire to?
The desire to want to lead?
Yep. Can that be done, or is that a calling?
I think most of my personal opinion, I think humans have an area that they are called to lead in. I think if you have someone who doesn't want to lead, they haven't identified their passion and their purpose yet, their calling, right?
Okay.
I think humans are designed to have purpose. I think that's inherent in all of us. I think some people haven't discovered it yet. And so how I would help them is they've got to get on a intentional growth plan. And just, if you keep growing, you'll get there, right? It's like driving across the country. You can't see all the way to California from Georgia. But if you start driving, you see a little more and you see a little more. We could not have, I certainly never thought when I quit my real job and started this journey. I mean, we didn't have any books back then, and now we've got 35 books. And, I would not, that wasn't the goal, right? The goal, if there is one, should be growth. And if we continue to grow, we will get closer and closer to that calling, to that purpose. And I think, if anything, you can't force someone to want to lead, but you can be that catalyst that helps them get a little closer to where they're meant to make an impact.
Yeah, and I would say, she's talking about being a catalyst, and you're talking about leadership being taught. I mean, it's a quote from John Maxwell: "Leadership is more caught than taught." So it means we gotta model it, right? And that's what he's talking about there. But if you model it and you teach it, meaning you're setting people up to catch it, you're setting people up to learn it from the teaching. Now you start articulating. Like the best leader I ever reported to was my very last boss. Really one of the only real leaders I reported to in 20 years. All the rest of them, Barney Five for the most part. And then some was nicer and some were not. You know, this guy was really a good leader. And he was in the Army. He was he won at least one, maybe 2 Bronze Stars. He was a captain. He was over a MP unit and a military unit. And he was a tremendous leader. But what he didn't do is he didn't ever teach it. He modeled it. I caught a lot from him. I learned a lot from that man, and I write about him in a lot of my books and give him credit. But what he didn't do is never said, Mac, read this book. Mac, you ever check this out? And we never had anybody come in and teach us anything like this. And that was his weakness. But he was not a bad leader, but there's always room to grow.
Yeah, well, he wasn't as intentional as he could have been about your growth. He was probably leading you in character.
Phenomenally well.
Yeah, he did all that, but he just wasn't pushing you to grow.
All the stuff that we've been talking about, he did pretty much all of that stuff. He just never taught it so that we could pick up that nugget and then go work on that nugget, go back to that nugget and reference it and quote it and that sort of stuff. But he was tremendous. He was tremendous in my life. And
I was just going to add that there are a few people who don't value leadership, formal leadership, because of the sacrifice required. Right, when you're talking about how do I get somebody to want to lead, maybe they're not in their calling and their passion, but there are a few people who just don't value other people enough to make the sacrifices that leadership requires.
let me add,
wow,
that you want to?
No, that's good. So what you just said, I mean, not that people don't care about people, but they don't care enough to make the sacrifice, and that keeps people from leading.
It does.
Yep.
It prevents.
And so and it's funny you say that too, and it prompts my light bulb just went off. But the people that don't lead well, oftentimes don't lead well because they don't want to make the sacrifice.
Yeah, they want the money or the position or the seniority or the parking spot out by the front door, which is not a good idea.
No.
That's a symbol. We call those
park
symbols.
in the back.
Yeah, park in the back.
Yeah.
So I want to answer the book you got laying right there,
Yes,
Blue Collar
sir.
Leadership, Leading from the Front Lines.
Yep.
That entire book is for what you just said. How do I get somebody to want to lead? That book is written for the entry-level frontline worker, blue-collar worker, entry-level.
Okay.
I had a CEO of 8,000-person company read that book, tell me how much they got out of it, because they had enough humility. They understood the principles, right? But that book most of our books are 30 chapters, 3 pages each, with short paragraphs, simple words, everything. People say, why you write such a little book, Mac? Because I want people to read them. That's why. And they do.
Yeah.
And people who everybody says blue-collar folks don't like to read books. Not all of them do, but a lot of them read these books, and they read bunches of these books. So that book it's intended, just like Zach gave me, I talked about last time. Zach gave me that 1-hour audio, and I didn't listen to it for 3 years. It's one reason that we do the book packages. So these leaders, when we come speak, they get lots of books and they hand out the books. Sometimes, most of the time, to people who are not going to be in the room with us, but they still get given a book.
Yeah.
Because we set it up so they get lots of more books than they actually even want sometimes.
Then they pass them out, and somebody goes back and looks
and
at
maybe
it.
they'll have a story like I got one day, right?
Yeah.
And so that book, though, that entire book from cover to cover is to motivate and inspire somebody who doesn't think they're a leader, maybe doesn't want to lead, to actually want to lead and actually believe they're a leader. And I wrote it in a way so if they had Barney for a boss or they had Andy for a boss, if Andy or Barney, bad boss or good boss, read that book, they'd say, I want my people to be exactly like this. Barney would want it because it'd be easier for him. Andy would want it because it'd be easier for him, but it's also he would see the character side of it. But that book, like I'll give you an example. One of the things that's in there, a theme of that book is I teach people, because you may not like your boss. The boss that hands somebody that book, the person that's getting the book may not like the boss that just handed it to them. So they may not read it just because of that.
Right.
And that's sad if that's the case, because they need to read it more than anybody so they can fire the boss, go get them a new boss.
Right.
So one of the things I teach them, though, is because I'm trying to do exactly what you did. When I'm speaking to entry-level people, especially if they call me and I'm speaking, I ain't supporting their company, because I got to be sensitive to I'm supporting their company about how I talk to the people. But if you just call me up and I'm not your company is not my client, you just call me up and I'm talking to you. one thing I want you to know is I'll say, who you work for, Jeremy? And you say XYZ company. I say, you must have misunderstood. I didn't ask you where you work. I want to know who you're working for. Because, see, what I'm trying to do in that book is I'm trying to get people who maybe been used and abused, got bad bosses, or maybe high-impact people that just want to grow and get better. I want them to know in that book right there, you working for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because as soon as you frame it as I'm working, if you're getting paid, you're working for you.
Right.
You ain't working for them if they paying you.
Right.
You working for you. You trying to support yourself and your family and all that sort of stuff. So now I teach everybody in that book, and again, they may want to work there for 50 years, or they may want to quit. I don't know.
Right.
Depends on their boss more than it does them. But I want them to know if you're leading yourself well, this is the business I'm growing right here.
Right.
Let's say all four of us are on a team, and each one of us understands what's in that book. Each one of us understands we're working for ourselves. And I ask them even in that book, everybody knows what's the best kind of advertisement. Word of mouth.
Right.
Everybody knows that.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what level, what business, everybody knows that. So now that I help you understand you're working for yourself, the business you want to grow is that business.
Right.
If you don't like this boss, don't make the boss look bad, because who looks worse? You making him look bad. Anybody who's good, who has a good character, sees you making the boss look bad. You may see Ria over there, and you may not like me. So you kind of hold back on production or quality or however it is you can get me back. Maybe
Right.
you late.
Yeah.
Just you could be on time, but you're just going to be late just because I irritated you yesterday. Who knows what it is? But you want to work for her because she's a good leader.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she's watching you.
Mm-hmm.
And if she's a good leader and she's watching you, you ain't going to get to work for her.
Mm-mm.
So what I want people to know is you're working for yourself. Everybody everywhere talks about everybody. That's just what people do.
Yep.
Everybody that works on a team, you're talking about me, I'm talking about you, and good or bad or whatever, it depends on our character, what we're saying. But what other people are saying about you is either increasing your influence or decreasing it.
Correct.
And relative to what I teach in there, when you operate in your own business, if I want to grow my business, which is me, I want to generate as much positive influence as I can, any kind of way. And then what I teach them in there too is you got to know, what are you being paid for? You are being paid. You're working for yourself, but you're being paid. And in there, I help people understand you're being paid for your experience every
Right.
day.
The value that you bring.
Yep, and
Yes.
that's based on character and competency.
Mm-hmm.
And character is 87% of your results is based on competency, and only 13% from character.
No, you said that backward.
What
Yeah.
else?
The other way around.
Yeah,
Oh,
other way
87
around.
character,
There you
13
go.
competency.
Yep.
And learn that principle from John in research he quoted. So when you start understanding that, most people focusing on competency when they want to get ahead.
Technical development.
Yep.
Yep.
And it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
Character, you got to change who you are.
You got to change who you are, and it's more difficult.
It's hard.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that whole book is filled with, and then again, like a CEO of 8,000 person company, he's still working for himself. The principles apply to everybody, but the intended audience is the entry level blue collar worker, so that they can go excel in spite of their boss
Wow.
and become promotable, become highly sought after employee of choice that people want to promote, want to pay more. The competition wants to steal you and offer you opportunities you ain't got. And that's a long answer to a lot of development. But the person you had on your team, that person would never be on my team.
Right.
Either they wouldn't be that way, or if they was that way once or twice, I would connect and build trust. But if I got a high degree of character, I'm more likely not to hire someone with a low degree of character.
Right.
Because the higher character you have, the quicker you can sense it. I always ask audiences, I say, you ever notice when you meet somebody that's got less character than you, how long does it take you to realize it? Most people say, not long.
Right.
I say, guess what happens when somebody with more character than you meets you? How long does it take? And I said, there's always somebody with more character than us.
Oh, yeah.
And those people don't want our influence relative to character.
Right.
Anyway, we could go for days, and I know we ain't got days.
We could, and we're bumping an hour and 20. And by the way, I would go for 2 hours. Hey, if Joe Rogan can do it, we can do it. Right. So we'll never have the influence or the audience he has, but maybe not. We'll see what God will do with this thing. But anyway, he goes for a couple hours, so we're good. All right. So, by the way, thank y'all for all those answers, because all that was very good, and I know it helped people. I know it helped me. So having took the time to come down here today and last week, and is there anything that Impact can do for you? I always like to ask my people interview people that come in. If there's anything that we can do for you, I would like to do that. And if not, it's okay. But I always like to ask. I do have some gifts for y'all, just to say thanks for coming down today. And so we'll get those on the way out. And then, I'll tell you what, one more thing before we go. I have a list of mandates. This will be the last question, the last interview question. I have a list of mandates that I teach on the show and that I am writing a book on. And I'm going to go through them very quick. I'm going to read them. There's 20 of them. And I want you to tell me which one you think is the most important. Okay? So as you're listening to them, just think about which one is the most important. And these are mandates, what I call mandates that I have said. I took these leadership principles, and there's a bunch of them, but I picked out 20 that I said were necessary to be a high impact leader. And because you have written books on that, I want your opinion. So we're going to take another minute to do it. Number 1 is ownership. Number 2 is clarity. Number 3 is servanthood. Number 4 is passion. Number 5 is discipline. Number 6 is determination. Number 7 is humility. Number 8 is courage. Number 9 is recognition of others. Number 10 is vision. Number 11 is integrity. Number 12 is character. Number 13 is resolve. Number 14 is being prudent. Number 15 is being temperate. Number 16 was meekness. 17 was honesty. 18 was delegation. 19 was consistency. And number 20 is resilience. So those are 20 things that I felt like were necessary to be a high-impact leader at some level. What would you say is the most important one?
I think they all come down to character. So I think to me and Mac may have a different perspective, because I think if you have character, the others will come.
Okay.
I think that's the foundation.
Okay.
Go
Matt?
ahead.
I'd say ownership, because every one of them things on there, and Ria's not wrong, character is the foundation of all of it, but I got to own, I'm seeing it slightly different. Neither one of us could probably talk about it slightly different. Depends on.
It's okay.
Everything's,
It does depend.
Everything's always relative.
Because I could see it as you have to have the character to take ownership.
100%. It's like chicken and the
You
egg.
have to have
Right.
ownership to have character.
So, I mean, and,
Yeah.
At the end of the day, there's not a one most important, right? What's interesting is that most people will single out one or two, and we're like, man, I'm doing pretty good in that one. That one's got to be really important, right? And then we tend to discount some of the others, and we're like, I'm not doing so good in that one, but it's not really as important. It's just how we are as humans.
But at the same time, what Ria said, it's what I teach. I don't talk about ownership, really. I mean, I do. Like, I see Jocko's book over there, and Jocko's got extreme ownership.
Yeah.
That book I was just talking about, Blue Collar Leadership, Leading from the Front Lines, that book is nothing but extreme ownership of leading self well. It's just my style. It ain't got the military stories and that sort of stuff. But I don't talk, my brand ain't built on ownership. My brand's built on character. And our brand, that's what we tell people. Our product is our character. That's why we don't really collaborate, like business-wise, with people, because people are buying our character. Our books are about our character. Character is the foundation of every single thing that we are. And your character comes from your values. And it's the chicken and egg thing again. My values determine my character, but my character determines my values. But which one is it? But it's our values are what determine our character.
It's funny. So, and I want to say this. So I wrote that list about 5 years ago when I was knee deep in my leadership study. And I made that list, and I built on it and added to it. And here I am teaching it on the podcast every other week. And then we do interviews. But I had a new one come to mind based on the environment that I was in some time ago. What do y'all think about, and I want to ask you this because you're experts, but what do y'all think about presence? So let me add to that. Leadership being present. Now, I'm not talking about physical presence. I'm talking about being present. So is leadership possible when the leader's not present?
And you mean not physically?
I'm talking, well, you could say physically or present, being present. So, you can be married and live at home with your wife and not be present there for her, right? Yeah. So, I guess what I'm getting at is the presence of leadership.
The engagement. Is the leader engaged?
Yeah, I've got a chapter in my book, Blue Collar Leadership and Teamwork. Every single of those 30 chapters in there start with the word be. One of them is be present. And it's slightly different spin, but it's, again, just like we were talking, you could talk about the same thing 50 different ways. But there I'm talking about being present like when you're learning and growing, but also leading is the same way. But that particular one, I always tell people, whenever you got an opportunity to learn and lead, you got to mine the gold and dump the dirt. I just want to share that because you just triggered my subconscious thought. But relative to what you're talking about, the leader does have to be there. I mean, you got to.
And not always physically, but if they're not present in their leadership, then it's not leadership.
Let me say, if I inspire you, if I motivate you, that means I need to be in the room right here with you to get you to take action, right? As long as I'm here, you ready to rock and roll. There's a lot of people like that. They need the leader in the room to make it happen. That's what I call motivation. If when I leave, you still make it happen, that's inspiration. That means really I'm present within you. My presence extends beyond my physical presence because who I am matters to you. We have that connection with, just like with people. I mean, I'm talking about people in our personal life.
Right.
We may lose somebody, but we ain't lost them because they still with us. But leaders who really lead well, they're with their people. Like, I'm not going to let you down. You may leave and be gone, but I'm not going to let you down because we got a relationship. I'm still with you. You still with me. When you find out if I did good or I didn't do good, or if I finished the project or I didn't finish the project, but all that requires what I call high impact leadership. We got to have that connection. We got to have the relationship. It's a high performance team also when you got a group of these people. It's like special ops. We don't care about position title. We all got one, but we're going to go make stuff happen because that's what we do. Yeah. In that case, we're all leaders. We're all present as leaders.
The best leaders, the ones that are great, are present. And a lot of people, and again, I'm learning this. We're always learning. But what I've found is that the great leaders of greatness are present. And most of the time that's physically.
Yeah, they're not in the front office all the time. One of the things we did when we started our lean transformation, we went from -3% to plus 35%. A lot of leaders, they didn't like it, but we didn't have all this leadership development I'm talking about, so we wasn't able to do it proactively. We understood it's the right thing to do, but like the engineers, one of the things we did is put casters, wheels on all their desks. Put their desk out of their office, out of the front office, put their desk out on the floor, right beside the department. Yeah. It drove them nuts to start with.
Well, Elon Musk tells the story about when things got tough at Tesla, he took his desk and put it out on the shop floor and he slept under it. And he wanted them to know he was there. And that's why he did it. And he tells the story. And him being present, his workers gave testimony to the fact that him being present made them want to do more.
Absolutely.
And so when I hear people all the time, and I'm asking y'all, but I hear people all the time, they say, well, if we have to be there, we don't need you. And it's like, bro, you hear any idea what you just said? Like, anyway, anyway, I was just wondering what you thought.
It's going to be a great book. That's what I think. Hurry up and write it so you can read it.
I've been working on it for a while. Literally, and I'm not even kidding, 10 years I've been working on it.
Did I share with you about, I got a podcast, episode 351. If you're into engines, you can think of a Ford 351 engine, but it's how I write my books in 7 days. All these books I write 7 days, from concept to finished book.
You have to teach me that so I can get mine published.
Hey, that's what the whole podcast is about.
We'll go check it out.
But you can call me. I'll help you out. And
yeah,
because you could do it. If you write it the style that we write our books, the short chapter, short books. And a lot of people say, well, I got more to say about it. We'll make that a second book or a third book.
There you go.
There's a sequel.
Yeah, you can easily do that.
I love it. Man, I have really, really enjoyed learning from y'all today and listening and talking to you. Thank y'all so much for coming again.
Absolutely. It's a privilege.
It's a privilege. You ask what you can do for us is just hopefully release this thing.
Oh, it's going to get released.
Right? I mean, if you didn't know, it's been awesome to share with you. And Kenny's in the background over there, and he's been nodding and smiling. He's been taking some notes and stuff. So this is all you got to do for us. But the reason I say put it out there, I know you're going to put it out there. That's why we're here.
100%.
But that's what we want to do. We want to impact people. And they're
Yeah.
free to call us, either one of us. No charge expected, no sales pitch.
Yeah.
And we just want to help people have a better life. So thank you. And we tell people, Ria's got a book called The Ladder of Influence. And I always say, even before she wrote that book, I always finish everything with keep climbing.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about. Keep climbing that ladder of influence. Keep increasing your influence and maximizing.
It's funny, my logo, I spent good money making that logo Impact Podcast. And it's a mountain, with mountains in the background. And people always say, why'd you do that? And I said, well, because it's a climb.
It is.
And,
Never ends.
And you got to want to do it. And so anyway, this show's all about legacy and leadership. And we talk about all this stuff, but you guys have shared some insightful things today that will impact many. I know my listeners are like, yeah, we took some notes. So thank y'all for coming. Any final thoughts?
If they want a free 2-hour video course from us, they can go to the5typesofleaders.com. They get an 8-page downloadable workbook. They'll get a certificate of completion. It's me and Ria on the camera teaching the 5 types of leaders, which are managerial, relational, motivational, inspirational, and transformational. And it's free. We ain't going to spam you. You just go and fill out the stuff and do it, and you ain't going to never hear from us, but unless you reach out. But it's just a way to introduce people to what maybe they don't know about leadership.
Well, thank y'all for coming, Mac and Ria. I am so grateful, and be encouraged because he helped out a lot of folks today. So thank y'all.
Thank you.